Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Daily Defender. Glad to be with you all again. Glad you're with us. Glad we're spending some more time together on another video and some additional content. This is a video that I think I mentioned I wanted to do. I've lost track how many videos ago, and that was a cleaning video on the Smith & Wesson semi-autos. Specifically, this will be a third generation Smith that we'll do, but the general procedure is the same for both the first gens and the second gens and the third gens, and I'll get into that a little bit. But also our usual admin, as you're probably all accustomed to now. Thank you for all of the subscribers. Welcome to all the new subscribers. We continue to need many, many more. So if you like what you're seeing on the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for the recent comments as well. Had some nice comments on the USP or H&K videos. So we're going to be doing some more of those. So appreciate all that. So continue to subscribe, hit the like button, etc. But like I said, today we want to take a look at cleaning one of these Smith & Wesson. Again, in this case, it'll be a third generation. In particular, this is a 6904. So these are you've seen on the channel before, these are the third generation Smiths, basically a 1990s platform. They're generally considered a 90s platform. And we're not going to go into the gun itself. Actually, I'll do a video on that shortly because I don't think we've done a video on the 6904. It's really actually a really, really pretty gun. As you can see, but what we want to talk about today is a little bit about how these guns, how I clean them, which maybe is helpful for you. I do get comments from time to time that, especially on these, what we're now considering older Smiths from the 90s and earlier, that it was their father's gun or an inherited gun or a first gun, and that it's been in a drawer for decades, or a grandfather's gun or something to that effect. And I don't think people are overly familiar with these, maybe in cleaning them and putting them, taking them apart and putting them back together again. I don't think we can actually take firearms apart any longer on YouTube. So we'll kind of mimic some of that and start and stop the video, but at least we can get in and show you how some of this is done and the inner workings. So obviously, the very, very first thing you have to do with any firearm is ensure that it's safe and clear. And so we'll remove the magazine and our feed source. We have no ammunition there. Point it in a safe direction, pull back our slide, ensure that we are clear, which we are, of course. And then we have a safe and clear pistol to work with. Now you've noticed I've left the hammer in the rear position because that takes a little bit of tension off the spring. And effectively what you want to do with these firearms is you need to line up this notch in the slide with your slide release pin. And that really the easiest way to do that is just grab the pistol on the top, careful not to catch yourself in the slide, and then just pull that back to this position. And then the pin is on the other side. And many times you can just push this through with your finger. Some are tighter than others. I keep this ballpoint pen that I've had forever in my gun cleaning kit because it's the absolute perfect size to come down on top of that pin and then push through. And effectively that pin then, it will release once you push that through, and you just simply pull the pin out. And as you release the slide will come forward and come off the frame, and then you'll have access to the inside. And that's what we'll jump to next, and then we'll kind of get into the cleaning regimen and what I do. And again, maybe this is helpful if you're not familiar with these or even new to semi-automatics. This is basically the way, minus the tear down or takedown, if you will. This is the way I clean and review all my semi-automatics. So we'll get into that next. So as I just mentioned, after you push the pin through and push the slide off the frame, you're essentially left with the slide, with the barrel in the slide, and then your recoil spring and guide rod on top of that. And I've just basically dismantled that into these components here. So we have our frame, our slide, our barrel, guide rod, recoil spring, and then our slide stop, slide release, which is also acting as our pin. So those are our components. And as I stated earlier, basically the way that I do all my semi-automatics is take a quick look to make sure that nothing's out of the ordinary. I'm looking for general wear. or maybe I should say excessive wear. General wear is just fine. And this firearm I bought used, so this was not my firearm, but the exterior was in excellent condition. And when I acquired it, actually one of the better blued third gen Smiths. And generally, if the outside is good, the inside is good. Generally, it's not always the case, but that was the case on this particular firearm as well. And so there was very little wear on the frame rails and in the slide, etc. This general and small wear, if you're picking up your father's or inherited firearm or what have you, and go ahead and decide. And this is a very easy takedown, right? Don't be alarmed or don't be intimidated by taking this particular pistol down. It's very, very easy, as you can see here, to get into our field strip mode. But if you do take it down and you see some wear on the colored wear like this on the frame, don't be alarmed by that at all. This is just standard wear where we have some of the bluing finish wearing off due to wear, and this is all common. But the rest of it you want to inspect. Make sure that you don't see anything out of the ordinary, especially as you use it and clean it often. You can come back and look for irregularities and things like that. Really, the same is true for the slide. Anything that you would find unusual or loose. If you have more than one of these, that's always nice too, right? Because then you can compare different things and compare wear. I've done that on used firearms that I've purchased, and it's very convenient to look at two of the very similar firearms. And then, of course, we have our barrel here. And again, you'll have a certain amount of shroud wear and wear on the barrel. It's completely normal, nothing to be alarmed with. And as we've mentioned many times, the build quality on these Smiths is very, very good. They were definitely over-engineered for their day, even maybe by today's standards a little bit as all metal guns. And so you don't have to worry about excess wear and things like that, generally speaking. So that's a takedown and the parts that you have. Really what I start with generally is just ballistol. And this hasn't been provided to us. This is purchased by me. But I'm a fan of the product. It's worked really well for me. I have no concerns with it on the finish. I've also used Hops 9, of course, for years. And I have no problem with this with older Smiths, really from the 90s back. I've used it for years, used it in the 90s on, and just had never had an issue with it. I like it. There's always an odor associated with these things. Sometimes other family members are a little bit more in tune with it than maybe we are, who use it all the time. The ballistol, I don't know, smells like old sweat socks to me. The Hops 9 has kind of a chemical odor. CLP is really good too. I like this one as well. And again, none of these have been given to us. They're all mine. Of course, if the companies find our channel and what we're doing interesting, more than happy to accept the product or even try something new that they have. Back to hoppies, if the number 9 and the solvent is a little bit too odorous or too strong, they do make this this gun cleaner, which is just in this little pump spray, and I found it to be works quite well. And it doesn't have any odor. So if you're looking for something like that, maybe that's helpful for you. I don't get too hung up, by the way, on products, on whether they're true solvents, which really the Hops number 9 is, versus maybe some type of a combo product, if you will. I will admit, or my experience has been, that the Hops number 9, if you've got something really dirty, the solvent, a true solvent, does seem to do the best job. It does it the fastest, the quickest, the most efficient. But it is a solvent, again, completely safe. I don't mean it in that way, but sometimes the odor is a little bit much, especially if you're working in a smaller room, at least for me. And I have found that I don't absolutely always have to use a solvent. Maybe if I've done a class and I've put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rounds through a firearm, then I'll probably do something like this. But my general procedure, if I'm just at the range, is just go ahead and use the ballistol. And I'm fairly liberal with it. And this gun happens to be clean, just so we can kind of quickly get through this. But generally, I'll just spray this down like that. Obviously, I'd put a little bit more product on there. Got an old wood box over here to the left. And I just have a few of these Hops number 9, and not Hops number 9, but I believe there's a Hoppies brand patch that you can easily get from Amazon. It has a bit of a rougher texture on one side and a very soft cottony. I like these. They do tend to pull a little bit. I know some people have complained about that. It doesn't really bother me. And essentially, so then I've sprayed all this down and I'm just wiping everything down. And again, this one should be relatively clean, and as it is, you can see that. But even here, there's none of these firearms are ever, crystal clear, super clean. But generally, you're just trying to work down, get all of your main dirt and grit and things like that off the firearm in that regard. Then I do pay particular attention to, usually with a Q-tip, with the inside of the rails. I'll work the inside of the rails down through all of these parts in here, into the spring, every little nook and cranny. I am kind of a nook and cranny guy. I'll just keep working that. I'll even bend the Q-tip on an angle so I can kind of get down into this inner area here and right above the trigger. That can get pretty dirty. There you can see it looks like either I didn't clean it or I missed it last time, or there was just more here. So that's a perfect example of kind of bending that Q-tip on an angle and getting in there. So you can see how much dirt can accumulate in that area. I'll do the same thing again, and I'll keep switching Q-tips over and over and kind of working in between all these levers here. Generally, you get a lot of grime and buildup there. In the back of the trigger and on the inside of the trigger, it's usually not too terrible, but you will have buildup there as well. Again, I'm a nook and cranny guy, so I'm constantly working all the little spots and angles and just cleaning that up. Generally, one spray with the ballistol is enough, sometimes two, and then I'll just kind of work this through the inner magazine workings. I don't normally take grips off. I do when I first acquire firearms, especially if they're used, and these grips are fairly easy to take off. It's a simple pin at the bottom, just drive the pin out, and then kind of pull the grip in a downward, backwards angle. They do have like little tabs on the inside that sometimes you've got to kind of pry a little bit and work it, but it's nothing major. And then you can kind of get into the inner workings and things like that. So sometimes that's helpful. I'll generally do that on a brand new gun, but I do not do that on range cleaning. So I have that all cleaned up. That's basically the frame clean. I do the same thing on the slide. I usually move to this slide next. Do the same thing with the ballistol. Continue to work patches, just in and through. It's the same concept of getting in all the nooks and crannies. Here you do have these rails, right? So it's generally pretty important I try to get as much debris and grime out of these rails as possible. I think that's very important, not only from a reliability standpoint and function standpoint, but just how smooth the slide then works on the frame. I found one particular tool, if you want to call it a tool, very, very helpful. I don't remember the exact name. It's engraved here. It looks like Baja USA. And then on this side, we've got a BCT. I believe I bought these. They were a pack on Amazon, and they had different configurations. But this particular one in the kit I found extremely helpful. They're plastic, but there's enough rigidity that they don't kind of bend over. And just putting this down, putting your patch down into the groove and simply working either the hooked end or the straight end, just back and forth, it does an amazing job of getting into that, into the not the rails, but the crevice for the rail, or the cut in the slide for the rail. And so that works really, really well. There's a little curvature here. I then come up and I work this area as well as I can. This area tends to get pretty dirty. And so again, this tool works well, this hooked tool, just kind of getting some of these different angles. Depends on, again, how much debris is left there. But that tends to get pretty dirty. There's a closer look at the cutouts for the rails there that you have to get into. This particular spot here obviously accumulates a lot of debris and grime, same here. I tend to work also back here a little bit where the decocker is, just kind of working that, moving the decocker safety back and forth and just kind of working that, getting that back down. I do spend some time with the extractor, and that's probably going to be pretty hard for me to get to here, maybe there. And right there, you can see the hook of the extractor, if you will, right there. And you really have to try to work and get in there. There's a lot of grime that gets in there, I find. And I do find, once again, this tool does a great job. You can get a patch in there and just kind of work inside that hook, and it does a really nice job. It's just the right size, and there's always some grime. You can try pushing on the back of the extractor depending on how tight your spring is. This spring is very hard, so it's going to be difficult to move it. I found other springs are much easier on different firearms, but you know, without driving pins out and extracting, getting the extractor out to actually clean, that's about the best you can do. And we're only talking about field strip, cleaning this pistol. We're not talking about a tear down or an armorer's tear down or anything like this, just general cleaning. On the slide stop, slide release pin, I'll usually just wipe this down. It does tend to get a little grimy. For your recoil or guide rod, it's a steel guide rod, and your recoil spring, it's not captured, so they're two pieces. And generally I just take this out and once again just wipe all this down. If I don't spray it down, I usually spray a little ballistol on the patch, clean all that up, get that back together. Same thing with the barrel. Generally I'll spray the front portion of the barrel, kind of let that soak in, clean up the barrel again, getting into all your crevices and nooks and crannies, kind of just working all these little angles with a Q-tip seems to work really well. The ramp, hood of the barrel, etc. I go back and forth with in terms of cleaning the barrel itself, the internal of the barrel. And there obviously you can see all the lands and grooves, etc. I generally start with a brush, and I've gone back and forth with this over the years. I've gone back to brushes. I do find that it does clean the barrel better. I've done both with just patches, and I do find if I start with a brush first, I do get a better clean out of it. I'm not using wire brushes though. I'm generally trying to use these nylon brushes, which work really, really well. I found that just to be have no concern whatever, with any kind of damage to the barrel, yet they're doing a good job of scrubbing the barrel. And I'll usually just put a little CLP on that and then work that through the barrel with my cleaning rod, maybe 4, 5, 6 times, depending on how dirty the barrel is. And then I'll just run several patches through it. Again, I may put some CLP on the patch, I may put some ballistol on the patch. And then just run that through until I get clean patches. And then from a cleaning standpoint, that basically completes what I'm trying to do from a field strip and general clean. And so at this point, you would reassemble. Now I'm a lube guy, so I tend to run guns fairly wet. I'm a big believer in running guns with lube. I'm in that camp. I think it makes things work generally well. It keeps things running smooth, running well. I am not overly concerned with an enormous amount of debris and lubricant or oil buildup because I'm not using the firearm in that manner. I'm not running around in a sandy environment or getting the firearm into mud and dirt typically. But here again, I'm still a believer that lube is the way to go. That more lube is better than less or zero or almost none. And I've found that to be true in the 30 plus years that I've been working with firearms. I've always done it this way all the way back into the 80s and 90s, and it's never really gone astray with me. I've even tried experimenting with different greases or grease instead of a lube. Didn't find it to really work any better than a lube. Maybe a little bit better feel to the slide, just that much smoother. Um, it, I didn't really find it gumming up things necessarily, but I also I didn't find it to be far and away better than lube. So I've really just gone back to a lube, and any of the high quality lubricants are fine. I think this is a Lucas oil, if I remember correctly, and I've put it into this dispense bottle because I really like this fine needle applicator. I don't tend to care for the ones that are just that come with the product. That the drops are too big. It doesn't work for me. So I found these bottles with these needle style applicators to work extremely well. And so my process would generally be to reassemble, and with the slide, I would normally put oil in through here, a very light amount, and I just kind of work it in with my finger. Obviously, I still have lubricant on my finger, so I come back here. I'll put maybe a drop. And when I'm talking about the amount of lubricant, we're talking about that. And that was probably even a big drop for me. I'll put a little bit down here and work that in. I do tend to run a bead down each rail, or cutout for the rail. I then also put a little bit on the barrel, and when I say a little bit, it would be something like that, right? If you can see that, and then we just kind of work that in and get that all through there, because I am still cognizant of the fact that we have metal to metal touch, and I understand that the product, the pistol is designed for that, and we are going to see some wear. To me, there's no reason not to put some lubricant on there and try to help things along. Barrel would be reinserted into the slide. Your recoil spring and guide rod would be then placed into the front portion of the slide here. You'd compress the spring, and then you basically have a small notch through here that once you depress the recoil spring and bring it back, it's going to sit onto the barrel as such. And then that would have your slide, barrel, guide rod, and spring assembly back together. Then on this frame here, once again, I would put some lubricant. And when I'm talking the amount, we're just talking about, a little bit here, a drop there, kind of work that in, that kind of thing. I don't put a lot of lube, or don't put any lube into these levers. I don't generally lube the trigger spring or anything like that. I think you could. I have done it in years past. I don't recall any issues. But that's I would put a little bit of lube back here on these rails, maybe just kind of work that in, etc. And that's going to be about it for the lube on the frame. And then you would obviously take your slide and line it up with your rails on the frame, and then drive that back. On these third gens, really any of the semi-autos from Smith, these first, second, and third gens, you do have a series of levers here. I don't remember what they all are. I think one's a sear lever, one's a firing pin safety, or firing or safety lever, and I can't remember what the third one is. But effectively, these levers have to be down and flat in order for the slide to come back. And so you have to make sure that the tension is off. That was the reason I drove the hammer forward. And then it's a bit of a trick, but you just kind of start with this one, bring your slide back, kind of get caught there, and then get down onto these two here. And once those are depressed, the slide will kind of, lock over that. And then you would realign your cutout in the slide with your hole there, and then drop in your pin and lock the slide in place. And of course, then you would do a function check to ensure that the slide racks and everything is functional. You would do a trigger check. You would do the safety decocker check. And then once the pistol was reassembled, I would run over it. Generally, I like these Otis cloths, these microfiber cloths. This one I've had for, I don't know how long now. More than a year, and I just kind of tend to wipe the firearm down as an assembled firearm, making sure that we have any exterior grime off. And this is a kind of an oil-soaked rag over the years, or year or so, and so there's plenty on there, and I can just kind of wipe this down once the firearm is assembled. And that's basically the procedure that I use, not only for these older Smiths, but really any of the semi-autos that I work with, this tear down, inspect, spray down with ballistol, patches, Q-tips. The pick tool, again, just works so well. Love this. Whoever came up with this, or I should say this company who did, they're great. Again, they didn't send them to me. These are my tools. Then lubrication, as I noted, reassembly, function check, and you're ready to go. So these pistols are not difficult to take down. They're not difficult to clean. They're not difficult to reassemble. Your first gen and second gen, if I remember correctly, like my 39-2 here, and this is a clear and safe firearm as well. They do have a barrel bushing up front here, but they're very, very easy to work with. Nothing like some of the very, very stiff 1911s that I've had where I actually have to use a bushing tool. You are not going to need this on any of the Smiths, at least none of the ones that I've experienced with. But the takedown concept is still the same here, because you can still see the notch in the slide, and then your pin access there to drive that through the other side of the frame. And of course, 39-2 is just a gorgeous firearm, amazing little piece of history there with the 39. But the third generation firearms, you'll notice, have done away with the barrel bushing. That's not required, so you don't have to worry about that on the third gens. So I hope that was helpful. Like I said, I've had a couple comments on that, certainly a couple comments with people stating that their relatives, like I said, had these, or someone had one in a drawer and really wasn't sure exactly how to take it apart or clean it, and how difficult it was, and what kind of trouble they were going to get into, just opening the gun up, if you will, to field strip it. And again, hopefully we've shown that that's very, very simple to do, and I can assure you, you can do it. And the assembly and disassembly and assembly is not difficult at all. Just remember, the trickiest part, honestly, is when you're putting the slide back on, to just work these levers down, make sure they're flat with the frame, and then simply work your slide across them, and then you'll be good to go. So I hope that was helpful for a number of different reasons, like I said. And thanks for tuning into the Daily Defender, and we'll see you next time very soon.